This isn't occult in terms of grimoires and witches. This is more about the symbolism of ritual and how this can be twisted or inverted for evil purposes. Hello. If you've been watching my channel, you probably know that I'm a bit of an occult detective myself. And if you're watching this, you probably are too. Before we get into it, I have a bunch of honorable mentions that I want to put out there. I've covered these in other videos. I will put a list of the links in the description because there are too many. So the first one I want to mention is The Exorcist III Legion from 1990. This is on my top 10 underappreciated horror films video. This is quite dark and scary. Brad Dourif is excellent in it. This is very different than the original Exorcist film. It's effective in its own way, and I would make sure you get the director's cut called Legion. In the Mouth of Madness from 1994. This is on my top 10 Gnostic and Occult John Carpenter films. This is about an insurance investigator who falls into this Lovecraftian world. It is very occult detective. Angel Heart from 1987. This is on my 20 Essential Neo-Noir video. This is a great Mickey Rourke performance. He's this kind of down and out private investigator. It has awesome atmosphere. And the final one I want to mention is Lord of Illusions from 1995. This is on my 10 Magus films video, where I talk about stage magicians actually being real magicians. This definitely has occult detective tropes in it. It's Clive Barker. It's very interesting. But before we get too far into it, what is an occult detective? Well, it can be many things. A private detective, policeman or policewoman, a reporter, insurance investigator, a priest, some kind of bookseller or expert in books, or just an everyman who falls into the wrong situation. The common theme here, though, is they get in over their head. They fall into an occult conspiracy. There are many characters in pop culture that I would consider occult detectives. I will put some on the screen here. I'm not including Dracula on here because Van Helsing is a minor part of the story and there are too many different adaptations. I also think it leans more into the supernatural and less into the occult. But I have videos on True Detective and Twin Peaks if you want to check those out. I might do an X-Files video at a later date, but I'm going to try and avoid major spoilers. And let's get into it. At number 10, we have The Pix from 1973. The director is Harvey Hart, stars Christopher Plummer and Karen Black. A detective investigates the mysterious death of a young woman and uncovers a hidden world of occult beliefs beneath urban reality. This was also called The Hooker Cult Murders. It is based off of this 1959 novel. It was filmed in Canada, takes place in Montreal. Warning, there are some heavy accents here, and several of the characters actually speak French. But this is an exploitation film, a B-movie. It is darkly lit, grainy. For reference, a pyx is a small container used by the Roman Catholic Church to hold sacramental bread. And this is kind of the plot device that leads us into the conspiracy. So I'm just gonna say it, Karen Black is kind of a strange actress. I don't know if you've seen any films of hers. I kind of find her attractive, but also kind of not. She often makes weird acting choices. You might know her from Easy Rider, Five Easy Pieces, or The Great Gatsby. Here, she plays a prostitute that's hooked on heroin. She also sings the opening song. I didn't know she had a music career. After watching this, I looked into it a bit. It's interesting. I wouldn't say she's great, but she kind of feels a little bit like a second-rate Carpenters or Carole King or something. Christopher Plummer is in this, and he's quite young here. Sometimes it's weird seeing an actor that you know as an older man or older woman, and then you see one of their older films and they just look so different, and they even act different. So this could have been a great movie if they had done something else with it. I think the director fails. It's not the script, it's not the actors, it's not even the way that it's shot. It's really the pacing and the editing. It just feels kind of off. It's dull at times, and it doesn't really have any inertia to it. But there's definitely occult stuff going on here. And with all of the Epstein stuff that's been coming out, this is quite timely, I think. But I would like to see a version of this by another director. I think it might have been better. If you like 1970s exploitation films, you're probably gonna love this. This reminds me a lot of early Dario Argento, like Deep Red or Bird with the Crystal Plumage, or maybe Alice, Sweet Alice. It's a police procedural with occult occult elements in it, and I found the ending quite sad and moving, maybe more affecting than the film deserves. I think this is due to the performances by Plummer and Karen Black. But at number 9, we have a tie of sorts. I'm putting both of the Night Stalker films. So we have The Night Stalker from 1972 and The Night Strangler from 1973, directed by John Llewellyn Moxey and Dan Curtis, starring Darren McGavin. The Night Stalker, a cynical reporter, stumbles into a case that suggests a murderer may not be entirely human. The Night Strangler, continuing his investigation, the reporter uncovers a pattern of ritualistic killings tied to ancient secrets. So these are TV movies that inspired The X-Files and also its own series. Both of them were written by Richard Matheson. I did a recent video on him. You can check out if you're interested. Jeff Rice wrote the original novel. This is a crime procedural from the point of view of the reporter, played by Darren McGavin. He's the skeptic. He doesn't want to believe. He's kind of the opposite of Fox Mulder, but he always follows the evidence no matter where it leads. As a great noir trope, he's cranky, broke, down and out. He's a Cassandra figure. This is a character who correctly predicts disaster but is not believed. The idea comes from Greek myth. The first movie takes place in Los Angeles. The second film is in Seattle. And I think these are great, but they suffer from 1970s TV conventions. I actually think this series could possibly be rebooted. Because of it being on regular TV at the time, it's a little chaste for what the material is. Like number 10 on this list, the victims are mostly prostitutes. But the whole premise here, which they continue with the rest of the series, is that he gets in over his head and then, he has to find his way out, kind of. In the first one, it's a vampire. In the second, it's this immortal Jack the Ripper type figure. What really makes these great is the performance by Darren McGavin. He is excellent. He just sells this. At number 8, we have The Serpent in the Rainbow from 1988, directed by Wes Craven, starring Bill Pullman and Kathy Tyson. A researcher travels to Haiti to study a mysterious drug and encounters belief systems that blur science and sorcery. So the TV commercial for this used to freak me out when I was a teenager. I just remember this line, "Don't bury me, I'm not dead." It's just a weird line, and there was a lot of odd imagery in the trailer. If you've ever traveled to countries where the police are as bad as the criminals, this movie will terrify you, I think. I mean, let's face it, voodoo is pretty freaky. It freaks me out. But sometimes places like this, where the law is kind of nebulous, that freaks me out a little bit more. You just never know where you stand with the police. You may have to bribe them, talk your way out of some problem that you didn't create, and you may just be at the mercy of whatever they decide. There is also a healthy amount of racism in these situations, I'll be honest. People complain about the police in the USA, but the people that say this have no idea what the police can actually be like. Anyway, this is about an ethnobotanist who enters this world of voodoo, looking for this miracle drug for a pharmaceutical company. It's strange, but this is based loosely on a nonfiction book by ethnobotanist Wade Davis. Apparently, he was in Haiti investigating the story of Clairvius Narcisse, who was allegedly poisoned, buried alive, and revived with an herbal brew, which made him a zombie. Comment below if you think zombification is possible. One standout here is the villain played by Zakes Moke. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but he's a South African actor. He is super effective and quite scary as the villain. He's a Bokor, which is an evil sorcerer or sorceress that happens in voodoo. Years back, I went to New Orleans and I encountered a little bit of this stuff. I did not like the vibe at all. You could not get me out of New Orleans fast enough. I just did not like it there. It feels icky, and that's what is captured in this film. As far as the story, I think this would have been better suited if they ditched the Hollywood ending. I was actually into it until the ending. I'm not going to say how it ends. If it ended with him being buried alive and her fate left ambiguous, I think the ending would have been amazing. I definitely think it would have been more powerful. It would have been more chilling. As it stands, I think the ending that they chose is a bit weak. At number 7, we have The Seventh Victim from 1943, directed by Mark Robson, starring Kim Hunter and Tom Conway. A woman searching for her missing sister becomes entangled in a secret satanic cult operating in plain sight. This is produced by Val Lewton. He is the man responsible for the original Cat People and I Walk with a Zombie. He's kind of the Jason Blum. If you don't know Blumhouse Productions, they make a lot of horror films. If you like devil worshippers or cults, you're gonna love this film. The writer based this on a satanic society meeting he attended in New York City, and this is a kind of unofficial prequel to the Cat People. Jacques Tourneur, who had previously directed a trio of horror films for Lewton, Cat People, I Walked with the Zombie, and The Leopard Man, was originally slated to direct this. I think this is a tragedy because I think this would have been very special if he had. If you've never seen any of those films, he is a talented director. But this was Mark Robson's directorial debut. He did a fine enough job, but this did not have the visual panache of a Tourneur film. And apparently 4 important scenes were cut, and I think you can feel it. The narrative is a little bit jumpy. Aside from that, I think this is quite nihilistic, especially for the time. It's said that this has lesbian, homosexual undercurrents with the main character, but I'm not really sure if I see that. Anyway, this film is quite dark, especially in the second half, and the ending kind of blew me away. I'm not gonna say what it is, but it was quite shocking, and it definitely sticks with you. At number 6, we have From Hell from 2001, directed by Albert and Alan Hughes, the Hughes brothers, starring Johnny Depp and Heather Graham. A troubled inspector investigates the Jack the Ripper murders while uncovering occult and political conspiracies. This is loosely based on the graphic novel by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell. The Hughes brothers originally wanted Daniel Day-Lewis for Johnny Depp's role, and I think that would have been very interesting. Might have even elevated this a little. I'll say this, the accents in here are atrocious. I have several friends from England and they would probably laugh at these accents. Depp isn't that bad, but Heather Graham is terrible. And if I'm being honest, it kind of took me out of the movie. And I should also warn you that this is quite violent and gory. If you're not into that, you're probably gonna hate this movie. There's another gory film on this list, but it treats it with a kind of dark comedic tone that I actually think works. In this, it's very brutal, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. It just gets excessive after a while. I do think this takes an interesting historical event and kind of expands it out to what is going on with the elites of these days. It definitely feels like what's in the news right now. Ian Holm, who I think is an excellent actor, was terrifying in this. He kind of channels his Dark Ring Bilbo a little bit. One thing that I find hilarious is when I was researching this, I found this quote by Alan Moore where he is criticizing how they treated his gruff detective. He calls him an absinthe swilling dandy, and I can almost hear Alan Moore say that. It just cracks me up. I will say this, I did like Johnny Depp in this. He's kind of this tragic figure, and that's one thing these occult detectives almost always have in common. They have either tragic beginnings or tragic endings, one of the two. At number 5, we have The Rosary Murders from 1987, directed by Fred Walton, starring Donald Sutherland and Belinda Bauer. A priest is drawn into a series of ritual killings that echo dark religious symbolism. This is based on a book I haven't read, but the screenplay was written by Elmore Leonard, and the premise here is that there's a serial killer within the Catholic Church, and he is leaving rosaries on his victims. This one leans into theological territory more than the others, I think, but the occult aspect here is the corruption. This is about religious hypocrisy, sin and absolution, psychological torment, abuse, institutional evil, and all of the things that come with that, very much in the Gnostic sense of that term. And perhaps this is maybe the most serious film on here. Very heavy, I think. I mean, I did enjoy it. As it goes on and you start figuring out what's going on, it becomes a little bit harder and harder to watch. This isn't occult in terms of grimoires and witches. This is more about the symbolism of ritual and how this can be twisted or inverted for evil purposes. I think the two leads are excellent. I really love Charles Durning's performance here. You probably know him from the Coen brothers film, The Hudsucker Proxy. This takes place in Detroit at a Roman Catholic parish. There are some very fun Detroit Easter eggs here. I was shocked to see Doris Biscoe, the newscaster. She's kind of a Detroit legend. There are other Detroit locations that are mentioned: Dearborn, Grand River. Fun fact, Jack White of the White Stripes makes an uncredited appearance, and he's an altar boy. I considered The Name of the Rose for this. It was weird and spooky, but it just wasn't occult enough. One thing I noticed about all these occult detectives, and perhaps the secondary characters, they go through their version of the 5 steps of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Because they're moving from their stable, non-ontological worldview often and entering an ontological reality. This is jarring and can be quite a difficult process. If you're watching this channel, you might have already gone through this process. I have certainly gone through it. But this one in particular does a good job of showing this existential struggle. At number 4, we have Fallen from 1998, directed by Gregory Hoblit, starring Denzel Washington and John Goodman. A seasoned homicide detective realizes a serial killer's influence may extend beyond death itself. So this is one of the several copycat films that came out after the film Seven. I didn't put Seven on here because I don't think it was occult enough. It's an excellent film though. There's no real supernatural aspects to this. These 7 sins are just a gimmick for the killer. They don't really mean much. But in this one, a demon moves from person to person, Azazel, which means strong one of God. And as you can see, Azazel was one of the Watchers. I think this suffers from some weird production choices though. It's too stylized at times, a little too much action oriented. If it was a slow burn horror film, it would have been way more effective, I think. I kind of found the action cheapening the premise. Just something more noir I think would have been much better. That's something about these kind of films, is noir should be baked into the whole thing. It should be in the concept. The more noir, the better. I think like the film Face Off, this requires a lot from the actors, but it's a great supporting cast. I'll put some of them on the screen here. I liked Denzel in this, but I think his narration is kind of a weak point. It just doesn't really work. He just doesn't sound like the jaded detective enough, I think. I do think the premise is strong, though. What if a serial killer was a demon all along? And what if this demon could change bodies at will? It's a pretty spooky idea, especially when you consider it over the long haul. Like, some of the serial killers in history could be the same demon. But the thing with the occult detective is there's always a price to pay, and the cost in this film is incredibly heavy. At number 3, we have Sleepy Hollow from 1999, directed by Tim Burton, starring Johnny Depp and Christina Ricci. A rational investigator confronts supernatural forces while probing a string of decapitations in a colonial village. This is based on Washington Irving's 1820 story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but it transforms it into a police procedural. Tim Burton definitely channels Hammer horror films. This is a love letter to the studio. He even uses a few of the actors from Hammer films like Christopher Lee and Michael Gough, but I love the circle of older actors he uses here. Many, many, many. This was the 3rd Burton-Depp collaboration after Edward Scissorhands and Ed Wood, and I love the look of this. It's just really awesome. It's mostly filmed on sets. One difference here, though, is that the investigator is a coward in this one. In most of the other ones, he's actually the brave character, and Depp almost plays him like a cartoon. He acts like he's in a silent film. But this is brutal in its cartoon violence. It's an interesting use of gore. It's more of a black comedy. All of the blood looks like a Hammer film. It's incredibly red. Almost looks like paint. Danny Elfman did the score, and it's quite good. This was supposed to be rebooted in 2022, but they ended up turning it into a comic book. There are many occult aspects here, though. Necromancy, summoning, demonic familiars, witch's pact, liminal portal between worlds, lots of things. There's also this idea of superstition versus enlightenment. There's the rationalism and the early forensic science weighted against occult superstition. But I think there are several reasons why this film is great. The visual design is obsessive. The entire film looks like a Gothic painting. It's like a nightmare fairy tale. It has masterful tone. It balances horror, dark humor, and mystery all at the same time. And the murder investigation is actually quite riveting. It keeps you invested. Clues matter, motive matters, the occult elements are an integral part of the plot. I didn't notice this when I saw this the first time years ago, but there's actually something Scooby-Doo about this film. I don't know, it just feels like Scooby-Doo to me. At number 2, we have Constantine from 2005, directed by Francis Lawrence, starring Keanu Reeves and Rachel Weisz. A world-weary occult detective navigates the boundary between heaven and hell while uncovering a looming metaphysical threat. This is based off the DC Comics Hellblazer character, but again, I want this to be more noir. You know, nix the stupid CGI. It really dates the film. These computer-generated angel wings, insects, demon smoke, all that stuff just looks incredibly dated. I think this would be more effective if those things were more like uncanny or implied. I think the ideas are good here. The performances are solid. One thing to note is that Rachel Weisz's character goes through the 5 stages of grief pretty hardcore. And I love Keanu, but I think Matt Ryan, the TV Constantine, is a much better fit. He was awesome as Constantine. There are elements of a great film here, though. Make it darker, make it moodier, not so goofy. Give me a mood like Chinatown or Blade Runner. I heard Keanu Reeves might be making a sequel to this. I think that's a bad idea. I just want them to reboot it, but I want it to be more noir, darker, not so effects heavy. I want a director that will treat it like a drama, more cynical, more about the detective angle. I could actually see this being rebooted like how Matt Reeves rebooted Batman. I'm actually reading a Constantine comic now, and I just think there's some great things there. They just need to get it right. There are some strong occult ideas here, though. War between heaven and hell, exorcisms, second sight, scrying and astral projection, relics and how they're artifacts. And this might be an odd decision, but I kind of think they should do it in black and white. I just think it would work better. It's a shame because I do like this film. There is a charm here, but this is the same thing that happens when Hollywood gets its paws into comic IP. It always kind of gives it this certain tone that I just don't think works. I want more from it. I want it elevated. But let's get to the final one. At number 1, we have The Ninth Gate from 1999, directed by Roman Polanski, starring Johnny Depp and Frank Langella. A rare book dealer becomes ensnared in a dangerous search for a text rumored to unlock infernal knowledge. So I discussed this on my top 10 occult folk horror films list, which is one of my very early videos, so beware. I only touch on it there. I don't actually say that much about it. I'm going to go more in depth here and focus more on the occult detective aspect. This is loosely based upon the 1993 novel, The Club du Mas. This is Lovecraftian. It has a rare book expert, which is maybe my favorite kind of occult detective. The MacGuffin is the tome, The Ninth Gates of the Kingdom of Shadows, and it's said to summon the devil. As a person with a bookmaking degree and a healthy respect for the book as an artifact, this treats these volumes with respect, especially the art and stuff that they put inside these books. You can feel the must coming off of these books. However, I also have to say this. It's a miracle any of these books survived based upon how they're handled in films. You know, from climate, idiots, calamities, those are the ways that books die. In this, nobody wears gloves. Depp smokes while he's searching through the book. I'm kind of surprised he wasn't like eating a turkey leg and drinking a Slurpee or something. It was just like ridiculous. The whole time I'm like, I can't even believe this is happening. I'm like, the inner bookmaker or book, zealot was just like, no. And it's funny because I've seen this several times, but every time I watch it, I'm just like, no, why? They should really have gotten a rare book expert or something to consult on this because it's just way off base. But the underworld of illegal book sales feels very real and sinister. And I suspect real stuff like this happens, especially with these people that are at the top. With the stuff that's coming out about the elites and Roman Polanski's past, I wonder if this is more of a documentary. It's interesting because Depp is on my occult detective list 3 times. So I'm just thinking, is this the kind of film he's drawn to or what? And his character goes through those 5 stages of grief. He starts out saying this, I believe in my percentage. And from there, things go awry. That's the other great thing about this, and what makes these things noir is that even though the protagonist knows they're getting in too far over their head, they keep going. They always keep going. And it doesn't end well, typically. The two female characters in this are excellent. Like in most noir, we have an ingenue and a femme fatale, but which one is which? Frank Langella is also excellent in this. The music is epic. It's the same guy that did the Dracula soundtrack, but this has almost every trope from the occult detective subgenre, and it really nails these. You know, there's a grimoire, symbol decoding, initiations, it's erotic. There's this apocalypse, you know, hell on earth thing about to happen, bleak ending. Aside from this, why is this number one? First, it's restrained. This is something that Constantine can learn. No big CGI demons, just eerie. It's scholarly. It treats occultism seriously. It understands its genre. The atmosphere, pace, and tone are all spot on. I love the ambiguity. It's just great. This is definitely Depp's best performance on this list. He plays it straight, which I wish he did more often. Anyway, I actually have enough films where I might do a second video for this. If you want that, you can comment below. Or if you know any that should be on there or that should have been on here, you can comment that below as well. Anyway, that's all I got. Take care. Have a good day.